And so he has some things to share with that, and then he's going to open up the word and share a message with us this morning as well.
Good morning. Thank you, Brian. Before I get started, I need to comment on the amount of time and energy and effort it takes from the people behind the scenes here every Sunday morning to make the service run without a hitch. And I got to see some of that firsthand this morning, and it's impressive, the amount of things that are going on, and we come in and just, oh, okay. But so thank you to all of you who are helping and working in that way. Very, very little bit of my own background. Most of you know me. For 32 years, I taught Christian school right here across the street. In the winter of 2022-23, God was working in my heart, helping me to understand that your teaching career is over. Why don't you go do something else? Now that's scary, okay? Especially when he doesn't tell you what that something else is going to be when you've turned in your resignation. The last day comes, you say goodbye. Okay, what's next? And that's what happened. But I knew what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was work at a place, something like Bethesda Mission. So I applied, I interviewed. 3 weeks after my last day of teaching here at West Shore Christian Academy, I was hired to work at the men's mission at Bethesda Mission. And so now I've been there for about 16, 17 months. I'm still the rookie on the staff over there, but I have the tremendous privilege to help you understand a little bit more about what Bethesda Mission is. Because before I started to get involved with them, and I started to do some volunteer work probably about 10, 12 years ago, going over there. Prior to that, I didn't really understand what it was. And if you work in downtown Harrisburg or in midtown Harrisburg, and you drive over the bridge onto Forester Street, you are immediately greeted at the light on 2nd Street by one of the Harrisburg city greeters standing there with a cardboard sign asking for help, please help homeless. And then you drive down to 3rd Street, and most likely there's someone else standing at 3rd Street. And if you go down into the center city, there's somebody standing by the hotel, there's somebody on Market Street, and I'm not here today to tell you whether you should give them any money. That's not my purpose at all. But what I thought Bethesda Mission was a place where people that are homeless, they go, they sleep. 3 hots and a cot is the common reference in the jargon of the day, where you just come in, you get free meals, you sleep, you go about your business. That's not what Bethesda Mission is about at all. And in fact, there are other ministries in the city of Harrisburg that's what they do. And there's a place for places like that, where you can come in, you don't even have to register, you're not interviewed, they give you a cot, they give you a meal, you wake up in the morning, you get breakfast, you go on your way, come back again at night if you want to. Bethesda Mission's not like that at all. Bethesda Mission is involved with helping guys recover. Our mission statement states that we are reaching into the community one man, one woman, one child at a time, offering the love of Christ in tangible ways. We have 6 different main branches of ministry, okay? We've got a men's mission, a women's mission, a community center. Go up to the next slide, please. Food bank, mobile mission, and a medical and dental clinics. Each of these is reaching out to people in need. And we have often a misconception about, well, they're homeless, they created that situation themselves. I'm not going to help them. They shouldn't have made those choices. I've got a caseload right now of about 21 guys. Most of them do not fit into that category, but rather they're guys who have come back from Operation Iraqi Freedom, where they witnessed some of their buddies get killed. And they come back under tremendous traumatic stress and turn to alcohol as a way of trying to solve that stress. Or the 32-year-old guy with a couple of kids who's in an automobile accident and the back pain is so severe that he eventually becomes addicted to OxyContin. And that leads to the loss of a job. And that leads to possibly even crime to try to get the drugs to mask the incredible pain that he's going through in his back. Most often, the guys that walk into the doors at the Bethesda Mission Men's Shelter have a story other than, I just choose to use drugs or alcohol in a recreational manner. Yeah, they are that. There are many who do that, but there are also many that have many other types of stories. The men's mission is probably the most visible place of the ministry. It's right across the street. I love this. Right across the street from the brand new federal courthouse that was built. So we've got all of that. And in fact, if you remember back in the summer when Robert F. Kennedy was going through some things, trying to get on the ballot or off the ballot, I wasn't following it real close. He was at the federal courthouse right across the street from where we are. We house about 100 men every night. We were at capacity all summer. We have not been at capacity for about the last 3 weeks. We're only at about 90% right now. And the reason for that is the other ministries in the city of Harrisburg that house people overnight, they're not open year-round. They will be starting now, but they haven't been. They only opened on November 1st for the cold months. And so a lot of times people will come to Bethesda Mission thinking, okay, I just need a place to sleep, I need some meals, and they find out that at Bethesda Mission you have to follow the rules. You have to go to chapel. You have to go to chapel 5 times a day. And they say, this is not for me. And so they'll go and stay at downtown Daily Bread or one of the other places that's now open as of November 1st. But the guys that stay are guys who are now able to go through a recovery program of some kind. Everybody's got a different format, and they work with a life coach, and that's the title that I do, where we work with these guys and we help them figure out what needs to be fixed and how do we go about doing it. And so a plan that I might have with this guy might be a little bit different than this guy. Now, we get guys that come into Bethesda Mission that they don't need recovery. They were doing life fine, and all of a sudden their landlord announced, I'm selling the building, you have to be out by the end of the month. But they've only been living paycheck by paycheck. They don't have a first and last month's rent. They don't have a security deposit. They don't have, and so now they end up in Bethesda Mission. Or the guy who just recently was traveling from Virginia up to New York. He's in an automobile accident on 83. He has just the amount of money to get him back to New York. Now he's got to worry about getting a car fixed. Hotel? No. He's at Bethesda Mission. Guys, they don't need to go through a recovery program. So we work with them and figure out, okay, what do you need? How can we help you? But a large portion of our guys are in recovery classes. And I get to be part of that. I get to teach recovery classes a couple days a week where we're studying not only the Word of God, but we're talking about what's necessary to prevent you from relapsing into the drugs or alcohol that brought you here. How do we recognize the triggers that are affecting your life? We do have the guys that are in drugs and alcohol. We've got guys in Bethesda Mission that have been there 5, 6, 7 times. But they keep coming back because they get out, they're doing fine, and they relapse. But after they relapse for a while, they realize, I need help. Where's the place to get help? Let's go back to Bethesda Mission. We have a women's ministry. That's not as big. That's up on the hill, where they're specifically working with women who are in recovery of some kind or another. They have that set up so that women who have young children can bring their children in with them. It's not set up for a woman to come in with like a 12-year-old son. But if you've got little children and you need help, the Bethesda Mission Women's Shelter would be a place to help you recover and to be a place of refuge. The director, several years ago, I talked to the director. In fact, Dave Dyson was sitting there with me when we were talking to her, and I asked her, what's the success rate of people who go through your ministry? And her point was, if you stay with us for 1 year, 75%. That's phenomenal. That's a phenomenally high percentage for positive recovery, 75%. But it takes time and work. And we're going to get into that in the message here in a little bit. We have a community center. That's up on Her Street. Used to be a fire station. And we bought the fire station. We built a gym. We have a nice kind of like all-purpose room. And they run daycare center, not daycare, but after-school program. Somewhat like what we have here, but they're running that all school year, and then in the summer I think they have 8 weeks of like a day camp in the summer, ministering to the kids in the community. We have a food bank. The food bank is down at the end of Mechanicsburg. Off of 114. Huge warehouse where we store food, some clothing, furniture. We work with other ministries in the community where the food bank we can use that to send supplies to other ministries, such as maybe an Adams County Rescue Mission or a Franklin County Rescue Mission that doesn't have access to a large city like Harrisburg and doesn't have the amount of people donating to it like Harrisburg does. So we are able to share the wealth with other ministries. The mobile mission, and this is an area where you can volunteer if you're interested. Every Friday and Saturday night, we have staff members who fill up a van and go out to the areas in the city where the homeless people are living. The tent city right there in the woods next to the PennDOT building, or used to be that large group under the bridge of Mulberry Street. But there's different places where you will find a large group of homeless people, and they'll go out there in the weekends. And we've got a van full of food, clothing, blankets, toiletries, coffee, hot coffee, sandwiches, and just distribute them Friday and Saturday evenings. And they usually take a couple people as volunteers. You just have to contact the mission through the website and see if you can get on the list if you're interested in volunteering in that way. We have medical and dental clinics, and this is a phenomenal ministry. I don't know how long ago, 10 years ago, they had the vision of we have to reach out to these folks in both medical and dental ways. And so we have staff, nurses, both in the medical and the dental clinics, who are there every day. We have a partnership with Penn State Hershey, where a couple times a month we will have physicians come in and bring their students from the school. It might be maybe Monday this week, we might have an orthopedic surgeon come in, and then he can deal with anybody there at Bethesda Mission, at the men or the women's shelter, who need help from an orthopedic surgeon. Maybe next week it might be somebody who's I can't think of the term, skin doctor. Maybe one week it'll just be a general doctor, and we can also tie in with these folks where they're able to write prescriptions as well, and at least get folks on temporary meds. We have a dentist who comes in, I think he comes in every Wednesday morning and does the big stuff. We've got the dental hygienist, but the dental hygienist isn't going to pull your teeth. We can't put you to sleep, though. So if you're going to come over to Bethesda Mission and you need teeth pulled, you're going to do it staying awake. And some of the guys, they talk about that. Well, better than keeping the bad teeth. So we receive no government funding whatsoever. This is a ministry. That way we can say to the guys, no, we have chapel. You've got to come to roll call and devotions at 8 o'clock in the morning. We have chapel at 10. We have chapel at 1. We have chapel at 7. And we have roll call and devotions again at 9 o'clock. Now, guys that are working, obviously, they're not there. We've got the recovery classes in addition to those things. But we are depending on donations. Donations from people like you and from a church like Bible Baptist that understands and recognizes the value of a ministry like this. We've just finished here in our church about 2 months of Pastor Brian going through his sermon series on shoes. And I was in the office this morning, and I looked at the amount of shoes that you folks have donated to Bethesda Mission. And it's amazing. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of the ministry for the many, many pair of shoes that you have donated that we'll be able to take over to spread out between the various the men's and the women's shelter, and even up to the community center. There are opportunities for volunteers. The best way to do that would simply to be go and get on the Bethesda Mission website. You could also come over and take a tour if you're interested. We give tours of the men's shelter. We can't show you everything, but you could be able to see for yourself what it's like. We have a large trailer. The donation center is full of clothes, but it's constantly being used. We also, I didn't mention this, we also have every evening, people who are homeless, who are not part of Bethesda Mission, will come to our side door looking for food. And so we hand out bags, about 50 every evening, of people who will just come to the mission looking for, hey, can you help me with a sandwich? Can you help me with a drink? And so we give out about 50 of those every afternoon between 4 and 5 o'clock. And what's exciting about that is it's guys who in the mission who are working the door and handing that out. So they're able to give back by participating in the ministry themselves. So I ask you to pray for us. It's not an easy ministry. There's some days where I come home thinking, wow, this was great. I had a great day. And there's other days that I'm coming home and I want to just cry the whole ride home. That's the kind of day it's been. And it's not because I've done something stupid or bad and it's just the kind of things that I run into every day. But God is doing a great thing. He's working in the lives of people. He's changing people's lives. And that's what it's all about. We at Bethesda Mission, through the grace of God, you understand what the word Bethesda means. House of mercy. It's from the term used in John chapter 5, where we're told that Jesus ministers to that man at the pool of Bethesda. And the word Bethesda is a Hebrew word, and it's a combination word meaning house of mercy. So we've got the big banners right in front of the building, House of Mercy. But one of the first things we talk to the guys about when they come in is recovery takes time. And the most important thing of recovery is you got to get your life right with the Lord. And so we direct them that way. Now we're on to the sermon. You thought that was the sermon. Tying right in. And I have, 12 minutes. I can do this. I just want to talk a little bit more about recovery. When I went to Bethesda Mission, I was under the impression that they have 98 guests here at night. 98 people are there because they've made bad choices and they chose to take drugs or drink alcohol. And as I already said, that's just not the case. But there are many, many times where recovery is happening as a result of consequences. And that's what Bethesda Mission is all about. And if you're at Bethesda Mission, you've already experienced some type of trauma. Can you imagine if 1 week from today you are homeless, living in a homeless shelter? And how you would feel? For most, probably all of you, you're not even thinking that's not even a possibility. And there's 98 guys, 90, who are going to wake up tomorrow morning. I'm in a homeless shelter. All right. Some of them are content to be there because they don't see any way out. Others are, how am I going to fix this? And the role of the life coaches and of the staff of Bethesda Mission is right there with them. How are we going to fix this? Most of them are under the feeling that if I only find somewhere to live, I'll be okay. And in fact, the federal government has a program called Housing First. And they will push that. The VA program has a program. Housing. At Bethesda Mission, we like to look at it as not housing first, but rather housing next. We have to fix the problems first, and then housing becomes easy. But if you just move someone into a house who still has the dealing with the extreme mental health issues or the drug addictions or the alcoholism, putting them in a house is not going to fix that problem. And so we deal with the recovery. Now, there's a passage in 2 Kings 17 that I'd like to look at for just a few minutes. And it's a story that most people probably aren't familiar with. And what we've got here is that we've got a situation where the people are recovering from problems. They're recovering from consequences that were very, very severe. And a subtitle that I've titled the lesson is, how do we keep the lions away? And you're thinking, what in the world? When we get to the end of the chapter, you're going to see that one of the things that God does as a result of the choices that the people made, he sends lions into the land. And the people there realize what's going on, and how are we going to deal with these lions? Let me just take you through 2 Kings 17 a little bit and just to explain to you what's going on. If I could have the map, please. I love maps. At the time when Solomon finished his reign, the land that you see on this map was pretty much all the nation of Israel, about 931 BC. Solomon had expanded the land of Israel greater than it ever was. It slowly shrank. They slowly lost territory to various other nations. By the time we get to 2 Kings 17, you can see on the map that the area known as Israel is very, very small. And then the area known as Judah, a little bit south of that, it looks twice as big. Half of it's desert. Half of it is totally, you can't live there. So the land of Israel and Judah, by the time we get to the context of 2 Kings 17, has shrunk to be small. And we find out in this chapter that what has occurred is that the country of Assyria has come in and conquered the nation of Israel. They've taken them captive. They've basically destroyed that land known as Israel there in the middle of that map. And if you read in 2 Kings 17, just some of the things that took place leading up to this, starting in verse 7, and I'm just going to read some things through the next 10, 12 verses. It says that they feared other gods. They walked in the customs of the other nations. They built for themselves high places to worship idols. They worshiped the Asherim on every hill. They made offerings on all the high places. They served idols. And verse 14 tells us they would not listen to the prophets of God that came along to try to convince them to turn back to God. Now, unfortunately, this is not a problem that just occurred over that previous 5-10 years. If we go back in history, we see by reading the earlier chapters in 2 Kings, read the book of 1 Kings, read 1 and 2 Samuel, read Joshua and primarily Judges. And we find out that from the time period after Joshua, the people stopped talking about God. And the book of Judges tells us that. They stopped telling the God stories. The tremendous stories of how God had been working in their life, the tremendous stories of what got them to the promised land to begin with, they stopped telling the stories. So the next generation of kids didn't know who Yahweh was. They didn't know the stories. They didn't know. And so the first fancy god that comes along, promoted by one of these foreign nations, they jump at it. And all of a sudden they're worshiping all kinds of different gods in the land. And when faced with the challenge to turn back to Yahweh, no, not going to do it. And so for several hundred years, we've got the nation of Israel just entrenched in idol worship. And then finally in 2 Kings 17, God says, that's it. And he sends the Assyrians in and they conquer the nation of Israel. Look with me in verse 24. This is where we see some consequences. I would say as far as those slides are concerned, don't even worry about them anymore. We're not going to worry about the slides. The king of Assyria, he conquered all these different nations that are mentioned in verse 24: Babylon, Cuthan, Ava, and what one of the practices of the nation of Assyria was to try to prevent a nation from rising back up and rebelling, is that they would take people from the land that had been conquered and force those people to move somewhere else. And then they'd take people from this land that they had conquered and we'd move them over here, and we'd move some of these people over to here. And so when we get to this chapter here in 2 Kings 17, we've got a large number of people living in the nation of Israel who are not Israelites. Now, they're not there by choice. They've been forced to go there. This is giving us a little bit of insight as to how we have the Samaritans when we get to the New Testament. This is where this all came from. But now we've got this large group of people living in the land of Israel, and this is what's going on. Verse 25. And at the beginning of their dwelling there, they did not fear the Lord. Therefore, the Lord sent lions among them, which killed some of them. So the king of Assyria was told, the nations that you have carried away and placed in the cities of Samaria do not know the law of the God of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and behold, they're killing them, because they do not know the law of the God of the land. Now, did you see the subtle difference between what's communicated with the king and his people and what the scribe, the person that wrote 2 Kings, tells us? The scribe says that the lions were sent because they did not fear the Lord. The king's servants report and said, they're not following God's law, the God of the land. They're not following his laws. There's a difference. See, God's not calling us to simply keep his rules. Keeping his rules isn't going to get us anywhere. God's asking us to follow him, to fear him. I hadn't planned on doing this in the sermon, but when I was having my devotions this morning, and I've got a copy of this both at home and at my desk at work, and I use this. I've been using this devotional book for probably about 7 or 8 years. And when I read this morning, I said, I just have to read this because this says it better than anything I could say. So I'm going to read a paragraph out of what Paul Tripp says in his devotional this morning in his book, New Morning Mercies. He says, there's a difference between a person in whom disappointment leads to self-reformation and someone in whom grief leads to heartfelt confession. I think we often confuse the two. The first person believes in personal strength and the possibility of self-rescue. I can fix my life on my own. I can do this. I can stand strong enough. I can resist this. And we get the idea that we can do things ourselves. While the second person has given up on his own righteousness and cries out for the help of another. One gets up in the morning and tells himself that he'd better be good today. The other starts the day with a plea for grace. One targets a change in behavior. The other confesses to a wandering heart. One assesses that he has the power for personal change, while the other knows that he needs to be given strength for the battle. One has to hold on to the possibility of personal reformation, but the other has abandoned that hope and runs to God for help. I already had my lesson plans planned for my class at Bethesda tomorrow morning. We're scrapping that. This is the class tomorrow morning. There's no question because this is what we teach. This is who we are. That you can't do this, and we have guys coming in all the time. All right, here's what I need to do. I need to find a job. No, you don't. You need to rest. You need to, and we quote Psalm 46 all the time, be still and know that I am God. You need to let your brain recover. You've been facing tremendous trauma. You need to let your brain recover. Let's go slow down, okay? But the whole idea is not just for the guys at Bethesda Mission. It's for us. It's for me. When I wake up tomorrow morning and thinking I can do this, I'm gonna live for Jesus today. I can do it. I need to be on my knees asking God for his mercy and his grace to help me not to be overwhelmed by those temptations, because the temptations that Satan sends to me are completely different than the temptations that he might send to you or he might send to the people at Bethesda Mission, because he's tempting me where I'm going to be weak. I've a number of times told the guys, I can't stand the taste of beer. I can't stand it. There is no chance whatsoever that I'm going to get drunk today. Not a chance in a million years. And I'll talk with them about, but there are other things in my life that if Satan dangles this in front of me, I got to be careful. I got to be careful. And if I'm doing that on my own strength, I'm going to eventually fail because I'm not stronger than Satan on my own. Through the power of God I am, through the power of Ephesians 6 and the armor of God I am, but not on my own. One last thing with this passage in 2 Kings 17. Starts in verse, is that a 28, 29. They have a half-hearted commitment. Look what the people in the land do. Because what happens is the king decides, we need to send somebody back to the nation to teach them the laws of the God of the land. And so he finds a priest who most likely had not been teaching these things right to begin with. That was what part of the problem was. And sends the priest back and instructs him, you need to teach the people in the land so that they follow the laws of the God of the land. Which, I mean, that was another problem with that, with them, is they're thinking that different gods rule different lands. That's illustrated perfectly in the book of Jonah, where Jonah thinks, I can escape Yahweh. I'll get on a boat and I'll go somewhere else. I don't have to worry about this anymore. Didn't quite work that way. So he sends a priest back, and the priest teaches them, here's what you need to be doing, but this was their decision. Verse 29, but every nation still made gods of its own and put them in the shrines of the high places that the Samaritans had made, every nation in the cities where they lived. Down in verse 33, so they feared the Lord, but also served their own gods. That's not going to work. God is not going to be happy with that arrangement. I mean, Jesus mentioned several times there's choices, and you can't choose the middle of the road. You know, you can't serve both God and money. He closes the Sermon on the Mount with the illustration of the wise man and the foolish man. There's no in between. You know, the wise man builds his house on the rock, the foolish man builds his house on the sand. You know, there's no in between. You choose to follow the Lord. And these people are thinking, and the scribe tells us, that they tried to follow the Lord, they tried to fear the Lord, and serve their own gods. And God has communicated very clearly with them that he's a jealous God. And when you think about it, it makes total sense, because God does not want to share his glory with an inanimate object, with a wooden statue, with a pole, with anything that you have created, because you've never received any word from a God telling you to do this. It's not like you've gotten this revelation where they've made it clear to you. There's been no communication. And so this is all a figment of their own imagination. But the choice is made clear to follow God, to seek after recovery. We are all in our different walks in life having to recover from something, or having to stand strong against something. Let me encourage you to do it wholeheartedly, to not rely on your own strength. God is not the God of confusion. God provides us with the power and the grace and the mercy that we need to be able to stand strong with the daily struggles, the overwhelming obstacles that are put in our life. And we have the God, the Holy Spirit, to be able to succeed. But it doesn't happen on our own power. Let me pray before I close. Father, thank you for the opportunity to share, to talk about Bethesda Mission, to be able to challenge here this morning. And Lord, we all need that reminder of, I can't do this myself. The Christian walk is not now you put us here and we walk and do it our way. We rely on your strength, and help us to do that daily. I pray that in Jesus' name, amen.